Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. Happy Thanksgiving, if you are in the United States. In today's episode, I'll be breaking down the most recent episode of The Day of the Jackal, episode number 7, premiering, I believe, on this very Thanksgiving day here in the United States. Darren's back as my co-host, and we also have a few recommendations in our conversation. Before we get into that conversation, I did want to draw your attention to some Black Friday streaming deals that might be useful for your pocketbook and for the coverage of shows that are upcoming on this podcast itself. Number one, probably the best deal on this whole entire bunch, Hulu is offering a 99 cents per month annual subscription for their ad tier. For those of you who aren't familiar with this or haven't noticed, basically all the streaming services now have a ad tier, and that's mostly where the growth is coming from. You can also get the ad-free version at a slightly higher cost. So if you don't like the ads, this is an opportunity to get a year of Hulu at a very discounted price. So to be clear, that's $11.88 for the entire year. And Hulu is a very useful service, not only for their original content and for FX on Hulu, shows that we cover here on the podcast regularly, but just to catch up on television that, if you missed it, primetime TV, which reruns there within a day or so. So incredibly convenient and useful service. Of course, many of you already have this. If you don't, or if you want to re-up your subscription, this is always when I re-up my subscriptions, by the way. So I had Hulu for 99 cents a month. Then I had it for $1.99 a month on another Black Friday deal. Recently, I've had it in combination with Disney Plus subscription. And here's your opportunity again. Speaking of the combination with Disney Plus, once again, the ad tier here for Disney Plus Hulu together is only $2.99. So if you want to add Hulu into the mix, there's also now, Max has been partnering up to grow its presence. There is a combo deal, believe it or not, even though they don't share a parent company. Unlike Hulu and Disney, both owned by Disney, Max is not owned by Disney. They're actually part of the Time Warner, or whatever they're called now, AOL Time Warner, if they still use that AOL co-branding, considering that business has basically gone the way of the dodo. They do have a combo which includes Max. However, that's only discounted to $16.99. So if you do want the Max and Disney and Hulu combo, I actually say go with the Disney Hulu combo at $2.99. And completely separately, just go and get a separate subscription from Max at a separate discount, $2.99 a month for 6 months. Once again, this is the ad tier. And they also have a annual option, which is even more deeply discounted, I believe. Okay, if you haven't started watching Day of the Jackal, or you've seen only the first episode as free option on your Peacock app, here's your opportunity. I'm not a huge fan of Peacock, by the way. I do think it's one of the lesser services. There are some shows you may want to catch up on there, but they are offering a deep discount. Here in the article I'm using as a reference point, they have it at $1.99 per month, but I saw it at even less than that if you go for the full year. I believe it might be $20. I mean, it is $20 for the entire year. At the 6-month level, it is $1.99 a month. And at checkout, use the code REALDEALMONTHLY or Real Deal, depending on which level you go for. And like I mentioned, $20 for the entire year. If you do want to see some of those NBC reruns, especially if you're catching up on, I highly recommend this, by the way, if you did not see Homicide, the old NBC procedural based on the best-selling nonfiction book, which features one of the greatest performances, the pantheon of great performances of any era, Andre Braugher's investigator on that series. Of course, this became much more prevalent in the wake of his death unexpectedly earlier this year. That's one reason to get the Peacock subscription. And of course, there's Day of the Jackal. There are some recent series that we've been covering here on the podcast, like Teacup. None of these shows, by the way, really stand out for me. And Poker Face, if you were a big fan of that show like I was, is still not scheduled for this upcoming year. There are perks, especially some of those reruns, right? If you love The Office reruns, for example. There's a reason to get it, and it's very, very cheap. And lastly, if you are going to be watching The Agency, a thriller starring Michael Fassbender that we're going to start covering this very week, that is via Paramount Plus with Showtime. You can get that for $2.99 as an add-in. If you go through Amazon Prime and you add a channel, if you've never done this before, you get a very deep discount there, and they're offering it once again. It's only for 2 months. It's $2.99 a month, but of course that will get you through The Agency. And of course, we also have the Dexter prequel coming up shortly. And in February, the announcement of the new season of Yellow Jackets. So Showtime, Paramount Plus has some appealing series. Also, if by chance you had caught up on Evil when it premiered on Netflix this year, hugely popular in reruns there. But the most recent seasons of that series not available on Netflix. Well, if you want to see how that series wrapped up, it is available on Paramount Plus. So something to binge during that 2-month window. I'm definitely taking advantage of this subscription. I currently do not have an active Paramount Plus subscription, and I'm going to need it to watch The Agency, which premieres tomorrow, and I will be taking advantage of this deal. There are other add-on channels on the Prime service, MGM Plus, for example, if you want to catch up on the series From, which is just ending. Not a huge fan of that, by the way, but you may have seen part of that series available on Amazon Prime. Well, you can binge up to the current season by grabbing the MGM Plus subscription. They also have some pretty high-profile series coming in the next couple of months. In general, I don't yet see the value add of MGM Plus, but if you've been curious to sample it and many other of these more niche channels are available with deep discounts, 70% discounts or more, as an add-on to your Amazon Prime channels. So I do hope you take advantage of some of those deals. I'm going to finish preparing the turkey. I'm recording this in the morning. And here's the conversation Darren and I recorded earlier this week about the most recent episode of, a very thrilling episode, by the way, of The Day of the Jackal. All right, Darren, I had a few things to bring up before we get into The Jackal, episode 7, which I got a little preview based on the tone of your email that you were pretty enthused by this. This is a very suspenseful episode for sure.
It was a great episode.
Yeah, and it's getting close to the end, so good that things are speeding up. Okay, so I was looking at my front page of my letterbox, looking at my friend activity, and I was just curious to see, well, what have you watched recently that I might want to talk about? The only thing I saw on there, and there might have been other things, but feel free to shout out anything you want to. I saw that you had reviewed a documentary about Diane Wood. So something I very much do not know much about that band. So it made me think of something I never think about, which is the cross-pollination between South African and Australian music. And I know because we're in the music industry at one point. So are you fans of theirs? Is there a kind of cultural crossover there between the South African, that genre of music and Australia?
I wouldn't say that there is a cross-pollination in music, but the city that I live in is the closest Australian city to South Africa. So whenever their rugby teams play here, it's almost a South African home game because everybody turns out. But in terms of the music, I mean, we have a big hip-hop scene here, and obviously, well, I guess South Africa does as well. The band Diantwoord seems very original, and the documentary was quite unlike other documentaries, and it was really focused on the art and the visuals of these people. And I know in hip hop, there's a big you kind of put on a front and you create a persona to sell your music, and these guys look like they really live their persona. It feels very authentic. I remember when I first listened to their music and saw their videos, it was unlike anything that I'd ever seen. And I did end up seeing them at a festival in a late afternoon, and they brought a heap of energy, and it was a really great show. I really enjoyed it. And this documentary, it's different. A lot of their story they portray as like a video clip or as like an art piece. And but what I found most interesting was that when they would be interviewing the subjects, they would have spiders crawling around and rats crawling around and snakes and just over the people as they're interviewing them and not wow. reference it at all. So yeah, it was a cool documentary. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. I know very little about the band, but yeah, I do know that there's like a visual aspect to them that is also kind of integral to the band itself, which leads me to the next follow-up question, which is, have you seen Chappie?
I have seen Chappie. Yeah, I was very interested in it to see what they'd bring to it, but I don't think it really showed their strength or their power in that film.
Any other recommendations you have?
I saw another documentary called, it's an older one. It was directed by Banksy. It's called Exit Through the Gift Shop.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It was amazing. Yeah, I can't believe I'd never seen it before. And I'm not quite sure that all the people in it are real.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Seems like a bit of a creation. Again, another piece of art that I found fascinating, and I didn't know where it was going, and I didn't know much about that world. So that's a very strong recommendation for sure.
I reviewed that many years ago when I saw it originally, which I absolutely loved it. I think that was my favorite documentary of the year. It was definitely on my top 10 of the year, that particular year. Told my friend who's also into music, very much into music, someone I've known my whole life. I told him that this is going to like melt your mind when you really, the more you think about it, the more it like plays with reality, which I think is the intention of it. In a nutshell, I mentioned the fact that the artist, who is supposedly a Banksy copycat, which then Banksy supposedly adopts, and then he does some Madonna artwork, which ends up the cover of Madonna's album. And I'm like, I don't know if Madonna is so savvy that she knows what she's doing, or if she got suckered in by this fake artist. And that's the whole movie in a nutshell. It's like, is this really, really savvy? Is this guy an idiot? Is this all a scam? Is this for real? And that's the commentary on the art world at the moment, right? It's an incredible piece of work.
It's amazing, and I haven't Googled or I haven't looked at the story behind the story, so I'm just going to go with it and believe what I want to believe, whether this guy is for real or not.
Right, exactly.
And I think he said he made $1 million from his first art show, and he's not an artist.
And that's the funniest thing about it. It could be Banksy doing the artwork, or it could be a complete copycat, just making bad copies of what Banksy does. And all of this doesn't matter, which is remarkable. It's truly remarkable.
Fascinating. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, it's an incredible piece of work. If no one's ever seen that, it's really one of the best documentaries of the past decade or so. Skeleton Crew. Are you a Star Wars person?
I am, from a long time ago, maybe not so much recently, apart from that Andor TV series, which I absolutely adore. The Skeleton Crew, I've seen the trailer. It looks promising, but I'm not going to hold out too much hope.
Same. I just saw I try to avoid trailers now. It's my new life credo or something. I just saw it watching the American football game that I was just watching moments before I got on this call. And so it's the first time I'm seeing it. And people have seen the first few episodes, which has been available to critics. They're very enthusiastic about it. I do like this version of Jude Law that we see there. I, in general, like the idea of making a Star Wars series, and hopefully it sticks to this, that is inconsequential. This is what I like so much about Agatha all along. It does not mean that the whole universe literally is being, decimated by some conspiracy. It's just about these characters and their backstories and their personal dramas. Anyway, all this to say that I feel, by seeing that trailer just moments ago, I feel enthusiastic about this for the first time.
Oh, great. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to check it out for sure.
Oh, I'm going to watch it. I may not finish it, but we'll see how far I get into it. That's basically my relationship with every Star Wars series. Some of them are just like, Ahsoka, is that what it's called? That's like 1 or 2 episodes, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm done after episode 2. I'm pretty much finished with this.
Yeah, The Acolyte was the last one. I think I finished it, but I didn't care by the end.
I made it 2 episodes in and quit. I think when the Space Switches showed up, I was like, okay, I'm out. I'm done. Although I might actually, I believe that. Although I might watch the following episode after the Space Witch episode, because I heard it has like the best lightsaber battle in all of Star Wars. I don't know if that's overhyped, but I might just watch that just for that and then be done with it after that.
Yeah, I'd agree. That is a good one for sure.
And by the way, Koganaga directed the first 2 or 3 episodes of that season, and I have loved everything he's done. And I was just, not enthused by anything I saw there. So, unfortunately.
Interesting. Okay.
So here in the US, there's this thing called the $5 mystery movie. So you pay $5 and you go to see a movie without knowing what it is, but you can usually use context clues to understand what you're going to watch, or at least narrow it down to 1 or 2 options, given on what's coming out in the next few weeks. And last week I got to see Gladiator 2 ahead of time. I didn't really like it, to be honest, but I did get to see it earlier than anybody else in the US anyway. I think it was playing internationally at that point already, because it was pretty clear every one of the theaters, each one of the chains, has this $5 mystery movie, and they all had the same runtime. They were all rated R. So it's pretty clear that this was going to be Gladiator, and I showed up and it was Gladiator. So I got to see it a week earlier, almost a week early. Anyway, the reason I bring this up is because the next mystery movie at my local theater is coming out after this Friday, so next Monday. And based on all the clues, it's going to be Nosferatu. So I may get to see it very early. Wow. I'm very excited for this. So I will give I'll give you an update next week if we talk again, when we talk again.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Did you watch Arcane at all on Netflix?
No, I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it yet. No.
I just binged it recently. I'll probably put out an episode about it because I was really impressed with it. Like it's some incredible world building. So if you're curious to check that out, I mean, they just dropped the finale of season 2, which apparently is going to be the second and last season of the show. The finale is not as great as the rest of the show has been, but up until now, it's been it's an incredible show. And that's as good as everybody says it is. And even this last 3 episodes, it's really like each batch of 3 is like its own movie. It almost resets the storyline each time. And this, as a standalone movie, this last batch is the worst of all of them. But the first episode of these 3 that came out this weekend is maybe the best episode the show's ever done. It was like pretty incredible. It does like this kind of reset in a really clever way that is like devastating to watch because you just kind of see a version of these people are like so damaged by everything that's happened in the show up until that point. And there's like a moment where it almost feels like, well, maybe there's a chance that this doesn't all go terribly wrong. And it's like really devastating the way that all plays out. It's really interesting if you want to check it out and watch them in batches of 3. I would say that they reset each time. And every time they jump, you kind of get vested in the story. And then they jump to a whole different set of characters. I'm like, I don't really care about these characters. I care about the other characters. And then by the end of that 3-story arc, you're like totally vested in that. And then they keep doing that over and over again. And the world keeps getting more and more complex. And the metaphor of like this kind of political intrigue gets more interesting. It's like really impressive world building. I recommend it.
Well, I'm going to put that on my list for sure.
Check that out.
Another series I haven't heard you talk about is The Franchise. Have you been watching The Franchise?
I saw like the first episode and then I didn't get further into it. I might watch it. Do you recommend it? Have you watched it?
Yeah, it gets funnier and funnier the further along it goes. And you've got to pay attention to it because the script is very fast. The characters speak very fast. It's a light watch. They're only 22-minute episodes, something like that. But I watch it every time it comes out and I'm finding it quite amusing for sure.
Is it still on or has it wrapped up?
I feel like we're about episode 7 now. So it should be close to wrapping up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason, I thought that it wrapped up the same week as Penguin. I kind of felt like I missed the boat on that. And honestly, I missed the boat on Penguin too. I was like behind on that and finally caught up with it. So that is on my to-do list. So yeah, I didn't realize that episodes were that short. I definitely will. I'll catch up with it. I mean, I have this week off, by the way. So I have plenty of TV watching to catch up on here. But,
yeah, it's fun. Yeah, there's a lot of kind of in-jokes, movie-making jokes about it. And Daniel Bruhl, the German actor, plays the artsy director of this giant budget superhero movie. And I think it's quite fun.
I was hoping that the first episode would hook me right away, and it didn't, unfortunately. But I love Iannucci. I love the creators of the show in general, the talent behind the camera. I love this concept. Making fun of Hollywood's franchise addiction, I think is hilarious. And what an incredible cast! Like the cast is just full of Billy Magnuson. I love Billy Magnuson. What's his name? The guy
Richard E. Grant.
Richard E. Grant, incredible. Yeah, these are just. Oh, and what's his name too? I guess he's the producer, not the director, or maybe he's the director. The guy who was in Station 11 and also in Tenet. What's his name?
Oh, is that Patel? Yeah.
Yes.
He's the first AD. Yeah. So it's his job to keep the train on the tracks.
Right. Anyway, the cast just totally stacked. I hadn't heard anybody recommend it to me beyond that initial point. So I'll catch up with it and we can touch base on it next time.
Cool.
I'll let you know. All right, let's get into the breakdown of this episode. We start off, we're in Talon, of course, as we left off from last week. And interestingly, Jackal, who was in a very tight spot last week, was shacking up with Rasmus. Is that his name?
Yep, Rasmus, yeah.
And now he meets up with Leonora at the library. This is this member of this cabal that's hired him. We still don't know the full details of that. And he asks for help for the first time. What did you think about this? They're at the library just checking out some books. They're saying, hey, can you help me out with this? I got this MI6 agent right on my ass. What did you think about this?
Yeah, so he's getting free internet this time. He's not going to a cafe.
That's right. Still use the VPN, though. Still use your VPN.
Yeah, absolutely. He does ask for help, and it seems like he needs it because he is sick of these people on his tail. And she's only too happy to help.
Yeah.
And she asks for assurance again, which he can't believe that she asks for assurance. Of course, he's going to get it done. But he still doesn't say that to her. But I think she's quite happy that she can actually do something.
Would you have a read on her in any way? Because later on, she's obviously watching what's happening when UDC, he's making the announcement and she's watching on TV and she's very concerned. She seems very vested in what's going on there. Do you get a feeling that maybe she's just worried about like her own well-being, considering her neck's on the line for this whole thing?
That's a good question. I'm not quite sure. We did see her with so they have that Succession type person in America that's watching everything on the big screen, the Charles Dance character. And he's got a couple of lackeys there that are always onto this mission. But she does seem to be slightly separate from them.
Right.
So yeah, I don't quite know, but I do have a sense of who she's talking to on the inside.
Do you have to speculate? Who do you think it is?
I do. So I think it's Osi, and I think so. Leading up to the first action sequence, he introduces Bianca to this sketch artist.
Yes,
and he says the name twice. This guy Carlo, I think his name is, or Cole, sorry. And he says the name twice, and I think just before the first action sequence starts, as Bianca's leaving the headquarters to go down to the street, there's a quick shot of Cole reaching for his phone. So I think he's helping do the hit for Osi, who ties back to this cabal.
Interesting. That's a good point. I had seen that and had not. Some of these things could be red herrings, obviously, but also I just couldn't figure out what they were trying to indicate there. So that's a good point, because there's obviously an inside guy. Yeah, and I had discounted OC last week because I felt like it was too obvious, but maybe not. I mean, we are late in the season, so maybe it is time to actually reveal who this person is, and we might be getting close to that. Okay, and then I have to talk to you about this for sure. All right, Nuria and her family. Nuria and her family. So she lets this woman's got to do a better job of this. She lets her brother in there to borrow $40,000. She's not happy about this, obviously. But she doesn't
keep trusting.
She doesn't keep an eye on this guy, man. And Jackal's watching this whole thing on video, which they got to be considering, man. Doesn't anybody have Ring cameras out there? Of course, they could be watching everything you're doing. He's, taking a gun, he's pocketing some of the cash. He's pocketing more than 40,000 because he flashes the 40,000, but he's like sticking some in his underwear and stuff. Like he's definitely taking more than $40,000.
A lot. He took a lot, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Not that Jackal would probably notice, to be honest. I mean, he's getting millions of dollars for his hits. So, I mean, not for nothing, but if I saw like $1 million in cash, I'm like, hey, is he going to miss another 50,000? But I mean, this is all crazy, because especially if she thinks that he might be an assassin, I would just turn to him and be like, look, how do you think this guy really makes his money? Do you want to steal from this guy? I would say not a good idea. But, oh man, how do you think this is all going to play out?
Oh, and is the mum in it as well? It seemed like the mum was.
She seems like she's distracting her, right?
Oh God! I was just thinking, this poor guy. Yeah, it's not going to turn out well for him at all. Yeah. I don't think he's going to buy this bar.
He'll never buy that bar. I mean, I have to assume this guy's has to die, right? Because if he threatens him in any way, he's just going to be like, oh, I'm going to, tell the police about you. And he's going to be like, well, you're not, because you'll be dead in the next 5 minutes.
Oh, well, they've got to go somewhere, right? Because we were speculating when the hit was going to take place, when this big hit that they've been leading up to, the $100 million hit, and it happened in episode 7. So they've got 3 episodes to go. And I don't know where they're going to go next. So Nuri is obviously going to play into it. They're going to go back to Spain at some stage to deal with this family.
About her, specifically to follow up on that, there is multiple flashbacks in this episode where he's remembering meeting her again. How do you read all that? Do you think it's that, is he reminiscing because he's going to have to dispose of her now, or...
Oh, I didn't think that. That's dark. I thought that was lovely. She was so lovely in those flashbacks. Yeah. I love when she just decided, yes, she would go out to dinner with him, and she knew where that would lead, and she thought this guy was great. And I think that was maybe the last time that he felt like a person, or that he could possibly be a person rather than just a lying assassin. So I thought that was really nice, and I thought it played really nice when he was talking to poor old Rasmus and saying how he had such a kind face and the kindness radiating off him, which also the kindness did radiate off Nuria in those flashbacks. She was just a beautiful partner that he imagined himself with. And I think he's feeling pretty upset that he just can't be a normal person with these beautiful people.
I don't actually believe that he was reminiscing over her, thinking that, well, I'm going to have to kill her now. That was half a joke. But at the same time, I just think about the practicalities of the situations he's in. But I was thinking exactly in line of what you're describing, is that he is seeing these regular people around him that he could potentially have just regular interactions with. And he has done this to himself. And that is still, and maybe it will come, but that is still the limitation of the show for me. Unlike the original film, where this guy is just a cold-blooded assassin, like literally just absolutely cold-blooded in all his decisions, that we are trying to build some empathy for the killer here. And, it feels like it is tragic in a way that he has put himself in this situation, but this is of his own making, right? Like he is not even like, I need $1 million so that I can live, and then maybe I can be on my own, or even a couple $1 million. He's going after $100 million here, right? Like he's being very greedy and putting everything on the line, risking everything for this. And I still have not been convinced that he would need all this, maybe he's questioning that himself at this point.
Yeah, it's a good point, isn't it? I think he's just trying to chase normal emotions and normal life, but he's just incapable of this feeling, I think. And maybe he just likes the thrill, or he knows that he's a fantastic killer, one of the best in the world. And maybe the satisfaction he gets from that is almost finishing to a degree.
Maybe it is. Maybe you're right. It's like being an athlete and you're thinking to yourself, I'm the only one that can pull this off. So it's the challenge that that he's chasing. And of course he wants to get paid well for it as well, but maybe it's not the money. It's the achievement.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. The world record sniper shot.
He already did that, right? He already got their world record sniper shot. He could just call it a day at that point. He'd just be a legend forever.
That's right.
Yeah, and let's talk about Rasmus a little bit. We have to talk about him again at the end, of course, but just momentarily there. How did you read the scenes, the next morning after they've been together? He's very uncomfortable with Rasmus being romantic with him. How did you read this? Is he uncomfortable with, and maybe it's a combination of all these things. I was thinking that one is he's uncomfortable with playing this role. He's not comfortable with the sexual aspects of it, possibly, or he was reminiscing about his wife. So is he thinking like, oh, I'm cheating on her, I feel a little guilty about that? Or is he like, this guy's probably going to get killed, I don't want to get attached?
I think it's everything, right? And it's also,
right.
Yeah, he's bringing someone else into his world, and the danger that comes with that. And you just knew that Rasmus was going to get it. Oh my God.
I know, poor Rasmus. Yeah, we knew that the whole time anyway, especially when he starts saying like, oh, you're so kind, you have such a kind face. You're like, oh no, don't tell him that. He's definitely dead.
He gets him in exactly how he thought. He gets him into the venue and exactly where the Jackal wanted to be.
Yeah, and he helps him get it. He obviously uses his card. He's like, here, use my card so you can go take a tour. He's like, oh, I want to go see this area. I forgot specifically which area he wanted to see. But of course, he wants to get into that, into the roof area and lock himself inside of an air vent or whatever eventually is what he does. I found it very funny that he goes up to the snack stand and he's just like, yeah, give me like 4 chocolate bars and he like 4 water bottles. And he's like, that's a lot of snacks for a concert. But
I love that. And then he's like, oh, €30. Oh, complaining about the price.
For a second there, he was, I thought he was going to put his card on and I'm like, oh, he's going to give himself away, or maybe he has a separate card. But of course he pays cash. That's a smart thing to do, especially when you suspiciously buy all these snacks. Oh, I got to go back before we move on. I have to go back to something you mentioned earlier. How hilarious was it during inside the MI6 when we're earlier there with Bianca, the sketch? Here's generic white man. And he's like, I saw that person. I'm like, really? Can you identify this person from this sketch? I'm not sure I would have picked them out. But I guess they did set up that police officer in Estonia, that she was very sharp, right? So maybe she was looking for anyone who vaguely looks like this person she met. But I did find the sketch hilarious.
Yeah, it led them straight to him.
It worked somehow. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then after they talked to her, they revised a little bit. Now it really does start looking like him, but they just made his hair a little bit spikier. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that kind of looks like him this time. But that first time it was very funny where they're just like, here's like 4 lines of like a generic white dude. And it's like, I've seen that guy before. I'm like, yeah, I've seen that guy every day. Like, I'm just not sure that's enough information.
Distinctive mouth or the cheeks.
Yes.
Just sold it. I don't know how many British people are cruising around Estonia.
That's a good point. He does look British, at least. They got that right. Oh, and the other thing I glossed over that I definitely want to talk about is the help that they bring the worst Russian agents of all times, that they try to kill them right in front of, try to kill Bianca and her partner right in front of the MI6 building. Like, this is one of the most ridiculous botched assassination attempts I've ever seen.
It was a good action scene, though. It was. And it was very quick, very fast. And yeah, I was right behind it. Loved it when that car flipped and the guy came out, directed straight at her. Yeah, I thought it was great.
I like that Charles Dance at least references it, going like, never hire Russians to do this again. At least they acknowledge the fact that this was a terrible job.
Inept, drunk peasants.
Exactly. That really does seem like someone who has no experience. They're like, oh, you want me to get her in broad daylight? I'm going to roll up in front of the building, and if I see her like have a cigarette break, I'll just shoot whoever comes outside. I'm like, I don't think that's the best course of action. Just letting you know. I mean, even if you kill them, you're not going to get away.
No, that's right. And her OC was very concerned. Oh, are you okay, Bianca? Do you want to go back inside? And she's like, no. Soldier on to the next scene.
Yes, she's like a robot. But that's a good point. Going back to your theory that OC could have dropped basically said, now's your chance, right? So that is a possible connection there. Or via OC, it's getting out.
Yeah, very sus on OC, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, so then he's hiding up in the rafters. He's reminiscing. This is when I think he has his Nuria flashbacks. Also flashbacks to some failed mission in Afghanistan, which I guess is his origin story. I assume we're going to finally get this at some point in flashback later as we get closer to the finale, which is only 3 more episodes at this point. Mm. Unlike the killer, by the way, going back to that Michael Fassbender movie, he's not just doing yoga and eating only the protein from his McDonald's that he pays cash for wherever he travels. He's eating chocolate bars and he's doing push-ups or something inside of this vent. Do you think that they're not doing a good enough job of looking into vents potentially for him? How did you feel about that?
Absolutely, they're not. But I did like. I actually felt claustrophobic watching him.
Yes,
in there and crawling through there and trying to stretch and not having enough room. He could just do his little plank move that he likes to do. How he built the gun and how he was peeing in the bottle. I enjoyed the sense of what it would be like just to camp there for. How long do you think he was there? 12 hours more?
Probably more, yeah. I do also like that in all these spy films, especially the old Mission Impossible show. One of my favorite things about that show back in the day, we didn't know what the plan was going to be until they executed it. So you'd see them doing all this training or building something, or there was always like, what are they going to do with that? And then you don't really see the whole plan to come together till the end. But we don't really get that. He didn't train himself to be inside of a small container with an oxygen tank or something, which would have been kind of cool to have, maybe a space that wasn't visible from the outside because he can literally see people walking above him. So it could have been something that was even more claustrophobic and terrifying that he had to actually prep himself for. But I guess they have limited screen time here. Then I'd spend time on that. I did appreciate it at least. And it was very suspenseful. I can nitpick some of the plot, but it was very suspenseful. Just the idea that people are walking right above him or they can see him from below. At one point, he's afraid that he's been spotted by Bianca. So all of that is very exciting.
Especially that there's a grate there that you can open. It's like, well, if you're going to check everything, you've got to check everything, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, the idea that they wouldn't have opened that and just have somebody, the security team, be like, well, here's all the places you haven't seen. Let me open everything up for you instead of just walking around with a gun and being like, yeah, I don't see anybody. I'm good. All those guys end up dead, by the way. All the guys who are working security on that level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from his credit card knife that he fashions.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty funny too, right? He makes the knife out of that.
That's brutal.
Yeah. And then we get to the big day. We have UDC is out there. I thought it was interesting that we have this boyfriend character who gives him a kiss before he goes out on the stage. earlier on, it seemed like they were boyfriends, but they're never. I couldn't get a read on whether these guys were together or whether it was just like someone who worked with him, because they never seemed to have any kind of intimate contact, not even like a handhold or anything. And then, they have this moment where he goes out on stage. So it's kind of interesting that they introduced that at that moment for, I'm not sure what reasons it is. I mean, maybe just to up the stakes that he's romantically involved with somebody who's going to witness his potential assassination.
I've got a theory that he's the real UDC. He's the brains behind the whole operation, and the actual UDC who's giving the speech is just a patsy and just the public face of what's going on. But
wow,
that's just me.
That is, you know what? I'm usually the one who goes for those type of theories, and I didn't even see that. But I love that theory that even if this public face would get killed,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. The river still goes live. And while everyone's distracted by the assassination, nothing matters. And that this is all a public face because he's so reclusive, that he's an actor of some kind. And that I really like that idea, because you think about the sacrificial lamb of Rasmus here, that it kind of creates a kind of paralleling there, which I think is interesting. Mm-hmm. Interesting way to have this parallel between the two of them. So it would be funny if somehow we can speculate at the end what you think is going to happen, but that the assassination is successful when it seems like it's all going to fail, and then it actually succeeds, and then it doesn't matter. This was just the sacrificial lamb, right? Just the public face. I would love to see that as a twist. So maybe you might be onto something there. You might have just spoiled the show, by the way.
he got a lot of close-ups this episode. I was like, why is he getting so much coverage? And he's always eavesdropping on the conversations. He's involved in everything. He's the right-hand man. Yeah,
he's always there. You're absolutely correct. If that's the case, it makes a lot of sense that he might feel some responsibility. Maybe they are. I mean, they appear to be romantically involved. So maybe he has, he has to basically imitate him or present this, and he's being coached by him all the time. Then they end up getting romantically involved. And then he would feel incredibly worried if, of course, first of all, his cover's blown if this guy gets killed, of course, just practically. But of course, then this person, like you are basically, by launching this product and everything else, you are putting this person's life on the line. And, you're, so anyway, interesting theory.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, it's the big day. Does his performance. The Jackal uses his sharpened credit card to do his killing. And he has one shot left on this gun. By the way, I thought that was going to be the twist. He was not supposed to shoot the gun very much. He's been shooting it left and right this whole entire time. And I'm like, is this thing going to blow up in his hands, or just at least just be inaccurate in its final shot? He can't even calibrate it again at this point because he's got very few shots left. So I thought that was going to be the twist. He was going to make the shot, barely miss. And then, of course, that would give him away, and he would have to be running for his life, and he wouldn't be able to take a second shot. Usually when they're like, you only have 8 shots, that usually plays into the plot later on. But that's not what happens. We have one of the security guards. I'm not even sure who this guy is. He runs out on stage and calls him a fascist or a hypocrite or something, takes a shot at him, gets murdered. So if this is a setup by one of the mole or something, this guy was willing to give up his life for it. So it's pretty committed thing for him to do. And of course, that botches the other hit, his shot.
Oh, couldn't believe it. I had to watch it a couple of times. I did not know what happened.
Me too. I was confused.
Which is a good thing. Yeah.
Right.
And the security guard, I think he was part of the venue security. He was maybe head of the venue security. I'm not sure, because we saw him a couple of times earlier in the episode. And so another lone wolf or working for someone, or who knows. But he had no chance. It was never going to come off. And the Jackal did get his shot off, which I didn't realize the first time I watched it. But he did get a shot, which missed. And that was it. And he had to exit very quickly. But yeah, great scene. I mean, the build-ups to these action scenes are fantastic, and the scenes are very quick when they happen.
Yes,
but very thrilling. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of build-up, and then the action is very quick. And I agree, all the action in the show, I nitpick some of the character motivations. I'm like, I'm a little confused as what is happening, and maybe the show will explain it. I have a feeling usually with these type of shows, they're not going to go back and dot their I's and cross their T's, so we might just have to figure it out on our own. But whenever the action is going, this show is really on point for sure. And this was very suspenseful, building all this up. I like just the way they shot the whole thing. He's trying to stay close to the glass. He's very close to the glass, by the way. And then he like backs away a little bit, kind of loses himself as he's talking, which is, what happens in those circumstances. Yeah. And it's funny because I was so confused still by some of the sequence here. I went on Reddit and read through people's comments, and there really wasn't a consensus. People were saying he was part of UDC's security staff. And I'm like, that couldn't have been the case because this guy could have killed him without doing it in a public venue. He's part of Bianca's security staff, and he's the mole, something like that. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. That's not it either. I think you're probably right that this is maybe somebody who was like him, maybe just a lone wolf that was willing to die for this cause, who had become part of the security detail in the building. And of course, people thought that this was just someone who showed up randomly. And they're like, how did he get in with a regular gun? I'm like, no, he didn't get in with a regular gun. He was part of one of the security details. I don't know if it was the MI6 people, or if it was the venue, or if it was people were also saying he was part of the comedian, the comedian who does the opening monologue, that it was part of her security staff. I don't know. But no, I'm sure that we'll have more detail next episode.
I feel like when they had Rasmus fooling around in the security scanner, I feel like he was there operating the scanner or having a chat to Rasmus. That's why I thought he was part of the venue.
Yeah, we definitely see his face before, that's for sure. So I'm curious. I mean, I haven't rewatched it enough to pick that up, but I would assume, just my gut instinct is that it is going to be somebody who works at the venue and was probably placed there intentionally, or he placed himself there. And then, of course, like you mentioned, everybody's racing out of the building. I do like the fact that in the chaos, they're like, lock the doors. And of course, the security people are like, we are not locking the doors. These people are going to trample each other. So they're two very different cross purposes there. The Jackal casually walks out, somewhat casually. He runs quickly, like everybody else, to make his escape. And he's outside. But Rasmus, oh, poor Rasmus. Rasmus does happen to catch him. And he's trying to walk ahead. I like, he's just like walking quickly, like maybe if I ignore him, he'll go away. Or maybe he was just trying to get enough distance from the house, from the building.
We're thinking that as well. As soon as I hear that name, it's like, what was he? So Nuria calls him Charles, calls the Jackal Charles. Oh, and I think, I'm not sure what Rasmus had another name for him. I can't remember what it was, but as soon as I heard it, I knew exactly who was calling his name. And I was just like, keep walking, don't turn back.
Yeah, and then he catches up to him. And what did he, I thought he stabbed him in the neck, or how did he dispose of him there? Did you get a look at that?
I think it was more brutal than that. I think he jabbed his thumb into his neck and choked him to death. Yeah. Oh, horrible. Yeah.
I mean, I figured Rasmus could have kneed him in the groin or something if that was the case, but I mean, the Jackal knows how to kill people better than I do. But it was very sad, but expected, unfortunately. And he just tucks him away in that corner and keeps walking. Yeah, and I mean, I assumed he was going to have to kill him once again, because randomly, as I was doing the other question, is like, who was the guy who took the shot at second shooter? Who was the second shooter? As I was doing that research, I did stumble upon just some people discussing the episode in general. And they were saying, oh, like he was an idiot. He should have gotten Rasmus further away or whatever. And I'm like, I don't buy that for a second. He needs to get away from there as quickly as possible. He's just going to get caught up like answering Rasmus's questions at that point. Like Rasmus is like, well, I can't leave with you right now. I got to go back inside. And he just does not have time for that. He needs to get away as quickly as possible. Bianca's like right on his tail. They have a photograph of this guy. He doesn't know this yet, but not a photograph, but they have a much more accurate sketch of him at this point. They've been to the apartment that he stayed at. So if there's any kind of paper trail, even if he's using fake identities or whatever, those things are eventually those loops are going to collapse on him. He's used that same identity to buy credit cards, to buy the tickets to to the concert previously. All these things are going to catch up with him eventually. He needs to get away ASAP and maybe head back to Spain, possibly.
Yeah. And again, I mean, now he's at his lowest point. I mean, he failed the job. Obviously, he still thinks the job's open. I assume he wants to still finish the job, but he effectively failed in his plan. And then he's killed someone who possibly reminds him of his wife, or just reminds him of all the good that's in the world. Right. He's got a split. Spain is probably the right place to go to re-energize, and maybe he'll deal with his brother-in-law there. I'm not sure.
Oh, right. And he needs to get to somewhere where these people who hired him can't find him, which, of course, the hotel and where he's been recently, or the identity he's used, he's got to burn that identity, because if they can track him onto a plane or whatever, that's trouble, because he has to assume that they're coming after him, right? So he's really bad spot right now.
So do you think that the contract's done? That's it, and now he's got more enemies? Well, they're not going to have faith in him anymore, are they? If he failed in his mission.
I was thinking about this just as I was taking notes for this conversation. We saw the island off Estonia, wherever he is, where he lives. We saw that he also has these drones that are flying around. So I think this is all setting up like how difficult it would be to get onto the island. I think they're setting up the lay of the land on the island. So I think that he's going to try to make some kind of bold move to do an assassination on the island compound itself. It just seems that we've spent a lot of time on the island to not use that later on. So I think that is part of the end game. But I can't imagine that's going to happen immediately, because they're going to want to kill him. And he should not trust them for a second. If they're like, let's meet somewhere, I'm like, no, I'm not meeting you anywhere.
I like that. There has been many shots of the drone swimming exercise that he's been doing. So yeah, the drones are definitely going to become a part of it for sure.
Yeah, that's not just there for no reason. And I'm not sure how it would play out, actually. It's also very curious to see what is going to happen, like you said, with Nuria and the family. Like that definitely is going to, pay off in some way. The brother is definitely going to be in trouble, big trouble. The other possibility is that the gun itself, if the brother uses the gun in some way and they track it back to him, that would be interesting. Remember, there's the whole setup in the very first episode that Bianca is able to find a place in the gun where the whoever filed off the numbers, the identifiers off the gun, missed one, because she knows where all of them are hidden. So if that gun shows up in some way and that pops up on the radar, I wonder if that's going to somehow be a clue that Bianca uses to track him down.
Yep. And he would have left that gun at the scene. He couldn't have taken that and in his haste to run out either.
Right. Exactly. That's a good point. Yeah. I guess they already suspected that there was an assembled gun like that, a plastic gun of some kind, given what they found at that location last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. Did you ever see Hitman, the Linklater movie with Glenn Powell that just came out this year on Netflix?
I did. Yeah, I saw it. I thought it was pretty light and fluffy kind of stuff. I enjoyed it, but it didn't really stick with me, to be honest.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I liked it because it was like adult and sexy, which I think is rare nowadays. So I thought that was a lot of fun. It's funny. I could think about it as a prequel. Maybe that's his origin story. Maybe he was just a college professor at one point, and then him and Nuria. It made me wonder if Nuria somehow knows more than but she definitely is playing too dumb for her to be in on this at all. It did make me think about one thing, is that when they identified him at the door, I think about how Glenn Powell in that movie has all these disguises he wears, but really it's just the way he styles himself primarily. He's not wearing like any kind of prosthetics. Just the fact that they got a clean look at this guy, just wandered, speaking about him sleeping, that random person knocks at the door and he just goes and answers the door. I would put a towel around my face, put on some glasses. I'd do something to hide my appearance. I'd just go there and be like, oh, who could this be? Let me go check to see who's got my door tonight. He's too invested in these really complicated prosthetics that maybe a subtler disguise would be not as onerous, and he'd be able to pop it on real quick before he answers the door.
It's a real part of him, isn't it? So I'm looking forward to seeing what he comes up with in the next.
He really wanted to be a special effects artist. That's what he really wanted to do, makeup effects artist. And
how difficult would it have been to do that by himself? So difficult.
Yeah, to apply it all to himself. Like, this guy's really good. If he needs a secondary job, he's got it covered. I'm a one-man job here for the makeup effects. So we have episode 8 coming this week. If you have to put money down onto whether he's going to try to do his immediate follow-up attack on UDC still while he's nearby, or if he's going to fly back to Spain, do you have a preference one way or the other?
Oh, it's so interesting. Yeah, I don't like to predict what's going to happen. I like to let it unfold. Mm-hmm. But I would have thought that he needs to go back to Spain. I don't know why. I just feel like he needs to get Nuria involved in the story a little bit more.
Yeah, and that was my gut instinct also. But then I was like, well, he's already in Estonia, so maybe he makes that. But maybe that's the situation. Maybe he goes back to Spain and his cover is blown in multiple ways. Like maybe they know he's there, maybe they threaten his family in some way, and then that drives him back to try to finish the mission. I think I'm wrong about that, by the way, because I think that they are. I think that they're going to be like Charles Dance is done with him at this point. And that's my gut.
Yeah, he seems pretty ruthless, doesn't he?
Yeah. And he's like, we can cut our losses. But I mean, they really don't want River to go live. And this guy is their best option, right? Those Russians are not going to do it. They're dead. So, I mean, I don't know what other options he has. But he could have hired those idiots to just run on stage and try to shoot the guy without any escape. Maybe that would have been just as effective in some ways.
He really is playing Brian Cox from Succession, isn't he? He's
yes.
I think he makes mention that we liked what that TV anchor said on the broadcast. You know, let him know that.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks again, Darren.
Thanks a lot, Victor. Pleasure.
All right. Enjoy your week, and we'll touch base again next week.
Cheers. Bye.
All right.